that sometimes people confuse it to? Instead of like it's a new
Yeah.
version of themselves, it's just the version that should have always come out, like the real version.
Yeah, I do. It's really funny because it's fun. Someone had just written on one of my social media posts, and I've got this program called Awakening Within and a Path to Inner Freedom. And it is about waking up to becoming our authentic self as we let go of these untruths of what we've been doing and how we've been behaving and how we've been manifesting and everything else in our life. And this person said, it's all about everything has changed, but nothing has changed. And that's kind of a feeling that you get when you let go of who you are not, and yet it's so familiar, like this is really me. So is it, you're not inventing, it's just becoming more of you. So there's not the sense of I'm putting on a role or an act or whatever. It becomes just more authentically natural. So that's how I would describe it. Like it's like, oh, this is so normal. This is me. This is it. And it's easy and it's not tested or triggered. Like it's natural. It's authentic.
So would that be something along the lines as um I've had a situation come up in my life. It's put me in a reflective perspective, and then I'm bringing out that terrain that was always inside me because maybe I was hiding it away from the world.
Oh yeah, and that can come in so many ways. It can. Like we can one of the things that came up is I was just pulled a card before we did this and what am I going to do and stuff. So let's just take one term called sacrifice. Okay. So a lot of times our actions can be like we sacrifice doing something for someone because maybe started off we felt really guilty. If we sacrifice, they would love us, or we sacrifice to get our needs met, for manipulation or something like that. So what we're doing is we're giving something or doing something, but it comes out of sacrifice. And someone can do the same action, but it's coming from joy and from love. Okay. So when all of a sudden, say we do our healing work and we realize we're doing this and we wonder why we're getting resentment or our needs aren't getting met, and we have this awareness and we let go of the guilt and we let go of all of that stuff. And then we start doing something natural. It's like, this feels different. This feels more me. I'm doing it because I really want to, or something like that. Kind of those little shifts that take place, and sometimes they're huge.
And I would say they're probably difficult as well because if I were to think about myself now, that could be kind of scary that you're living your life this way all these years, and then something happens, you're like, oh my God, Melanie, this is the person I should have been all these years. Like, how do we cope with that?
I don't think it's a case of this is the person who I should have been. I think there's a place of where there's this freedom that comes up, is there's this relief, there's this release, and there's just this like, and the pieces of the puzzle. So it's more a reflection of, oh, this just feels so much more at ease. I'm more natural within myself. So there becomes grace. So it's not, I've never met anyone who kind of goes from, oh my God, I've been this way. There's this release. And then the podcast, not the podcast, but the series that I have is we can have that release, and then our outside world is still expecting us to behave a certain way and be a certain way. And that's the hard work. How can we stay in this release and authenticity of who we are when the world around us was used to us being a certain way? It's like, what happened to you? Why are you not being the way that you were? You were always a giver and now you're not doing as much. Or you were always a pleaser and now you're not doing this. Like, what happened to you? So we go through another stage, is not like what you had said. It's more like, oh dear, is this okay? Is it okay to be me in the world? Things are mirroring back to me that this is not who you were. You were always like this. You were always this. So
And I wonder if that could lead to like a identity crisis because you're balancing between your how you were, how the world views you, and now you're viewing yourself differently, and now you want the world to view this way. Like, how do we
Yeah.
find a balance then between the two?
Whoa, hard work. That's where that's where you it takes patience, and this isn't it takes communication, and it takes courage, and it takes going through all of the things that led you. For example, it's easier if we take one thing. Let's just say you were always a pleaser. Okay. So it's easier to take a metaphor and sort of like, use that instead of all over the place. So if you were always a pleaser and you realized you were doing that because you never really thought you were worthy, that you were, the bottom root, lovable, so you always pleased to get that back. Someone would, love you, accept you. But you found after a while it was because you were building up resentment. You weren't looking after yourself. And all of a sudden you go to a therapist and you have this epiphany and you have this, oh, that's why I'm doing it. And you realize you are lovable, that that wasn't the truth. And you say, I'm not going to do it from that place. If I want to please, I'll please from a place of joy because I want to. And you checking in with yourself, am I doing it because I feel obliged or because I want them to love me or to like me? You make those changes. The outside world says, what the heck is going on? Would I ever asked you for something, you always said yes. you know and you're going to get that back. And so yeah, there's a little bit, oh, is this okay, is this not okay, because you're not quite grounded in who you are, and the world is saying like, this wasn't who you are, what happened to you, this is not okay. And there's going to be a weeding out process of those that will move along with your transformation and those that were only in your life, let's say, that were always takers, and now you're not giving, so I'm moving off. Or the pressure or that disgruntled mirror back, like what's wrong with you, can bring up that little bit because you're not fully there yet and fully integrated into not having that behavior and that pattern. You can get pulled back into it. Next thing you're doing the same thing again because it's just like, that's why I did it, because that was my reason why I pleased to begin with, is so somebody would love me, somebody would think I was great, or whatever the case may be.
And how does that affect the person in their relationships? Let's say at work or romantic relationships, or even with just their personal relationships. How would that impact them?
Huge. It does. I mean, like, who are you? Like, this was not the person who I got the relationship into. So in the series that I have, it's learning how to communicate it in a compassionate way, instead of this hard, well, I'm never going to do this and that's it. It's just like, I used to, and you share your experience about it. But you can either move with the relationship and share, in a compassionate way, this is where I'm changing, this is what I realize, and you open the dialogue. And it may take time for them to get used to you this way. So in my series, I have all these little things that you can do and how you can do it. It does not mean, however, that it's a guaranteed thing, because some people are there for a reason, and not for the full thing. They're not moving and growing along with you. And it's just like, no, this is who you were supposed to be. This is why I got attracted to you, because you were always the giver and now you've stopped. Or you were always the doormat, or you were always this, or you were always, and it can be something that's perceived as positive too. You were always the strong one. And then you have a breakdown, and then you realize, hey, I've not been receiving in my life. I was always, doing and giving and doing all that. And then I had a crisis, and now I'm just realized there's nothing left in me and I want to receive. How come you're not giving to me?
And
So
I'm
it's going to
wonder,
change.
yeah, like I'm looking at my own life if I was ever in a situation like that. And I think that maybe I was, because I made changes, especially in my 20s and my 30s. And I'm just looking back and I'm thinking, Melanie, like how much of that was I was becoming a person that I should have always been, or maybe not always been, but I was becoming my real me,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I buried it because of the people around me, because I'm looking back now and it wasn't cool to be that way. It wasn't
Yeah.
acceptable to my peer group, at least, right? So as I
Mhm.
became the real me, everyone around me kind of fell away.
Yeah.
Now you're lonely. Now you're alone. And I'll be honest, there's times where I'm thinking, okay, maybe if I just try to have one foot in one world and one foot in the other world and walk like that, right?
I've
And you only
tried
could,
that. It
I've
doesn't
tried
work.
that. It doesn't
Yeah.
work.
No, it
It
doesn't
lasted
work.
a couple of weeks. And then after a while,
Yeah.
you're like, it became so stressful. Was that the same thing for you?
Yeah, the tension, the stress of trying to live in two worlds. It's like I was two-faced. There's two people going on in here, for this group of people. And even in my family, as I started, doing the work that I was doing, and I was spending a lot of time in India and meditation and awakening to my own and all that. My brother, I remember, and it's in the series that I do, he would go, "Are you okay? Are you in a cult? Like, what's going on with you?" Because even in our family, we have family dynamics. Like, we have a role that we play, and when we break those rules, it disrupts the family dynamic, so it becomes like, what is going on? Like, and then it just caused this ripple effect as I stayed steadfast in what I was doing. But the whole relationship within my whole family broke apart because it was this symbiotic relationship. I do this, you do that, and you do that. And one person comes out of the fold, and it's like, whoa, what the heck is going on? Now, as it turns out, honestly, I'm the first person that my brother comes to who asks for advice. If he wants to know the truth, if he wants to know something, he comes to me. Whereas before, I was just the black sheep, and I was the one that was always in trouble and everything else. So I've kind of become the guru, in the family. So it changes everything, but it didn't mean it was easy. There was a lot of disruption, a lot of, who are you? Me feeling obliged to my own family that this is the role that I've always played. This is, just for them to see me in a different light, where for the longest time they did not want to see me in a different light. This is the way they saw me, and I played it very well, and there was purpose for me to play that role. I was the distraction for the family. As a black sheep, if I could be the distraction, then we didn't have to look at all the other stuff. Then all of a sudden that flips right over. Hey, I'm the one who's going right in for the truth. Well, you don't think that caused disruption for the family, where I would point things out? Well, you guys are all, this is all illusion. This is what's going on here. Wake up and see it. So yeah, it would cause a lot of disruption.
It's like someone's holding up a big sign displaying everyone's issues, right? Like everything
Yeah,
that's wrong with them.
yeah,
And then everyone's pointing at you as like, get out. You
yeah.
can't do this,
It's
right? Right. But the flip side is that they all get together and then they look at you and now they're united in a way that they're finding maybe what's different with you, what's wrong with you, instead of figuring out what's going on with them. Because as you mentioned, it's a distraction. And I wonder for you, since you went through it, how difficult was it for you during that period of time where you're coming from a place of good faith, but unfortunately is not being well received?
It was very difficult. I'm not going to lie about it. In different aspects of, with my sister, I was always in a role with this way and shifted that role. But my commitment, and this is what I emphasize in this series, my commitment was to come back into the family with the intention of healing and love and compassion. And I think, when you come in like hard ass, you're just going to bang and you're going to do it and you don't care and you're all bad and you're all wrong. I kind of look at it in a sense as these gifts or these qualities of who we authentically are, okay, are there for a purpose. And it's believed that we choose our families, whether we want to like it or not. If you can imagine we're somewhere out in the cosmos and we have these amazing gifts, right? And we say, now, who needs it the most? And you choose this family and you go, they do. I'm going in. I'm going to go and help because I want to, help heal this whole world and this planet and everything else, or whatever the case may be. I want to give them this, right? So you come in, and then it's all of a sudden like, holy crap. and you just are so little and there's no way you're going to give those gifts. It's not received and you lose all of that. And then you begin to conform to fit in because no matter who we are, we're out for survival. And we need that tribe around us to survive. We're just not big enough to go out and get our own food and do this. So we will do whatever we need to do to ensure some kind of survival mode. So we that's where it starts. We begin to change ourselves. We begin to adapt to fit in. We begin to camouflage ourselves, but the camouflage becomes so ingrained in us, we begin to believe this is really who we are. We forget. But it's funny, and as much as we think we forget, there's always a part of it that doesn't forget. And that's where this conflict within starts to rise up in illness, in, the dark night of the soul, or whatever it happens. It begins to rise up because I think it's the nature of our authentic self is to rise up and be here for what our purpose is to be, which is authentically ourselves. That's it. Nothing more. It's not to do this or that, but in that authenticity is our purpose naturally is presented. It's already there to us. So
So, Melanie, so when it comes to then, let's say, um, those who haven't realized their real self, could it be that the person that they're portraying now is a sense of protection for them?
it can be sure, absolutely. And it can be a lot of other things. I mean, I think it's um I think it's so multi-dimensional and multifaceted. I mean, it's like peeling off the layers of these aha moments as we come rare. And those are the ones that, where it's just like, boom, you're enlightened, like it's usually not quite so fast. It's usually a series of evolution as you move through life and you realize if you're on this path of I'm going to call awakening, that there's a part of you that wants to evolve, to heal, to unfold. I mean, it's just a natural thing. And then there's the rare occasion that you're in front of a guru and poof, everything falls apart and it's just like, whoa, you're here. And you've heard, and there's some leaders out there who've had that happen, and or say that it's happened or whatever. I'm not there to say this way or that way, but to me that's in an enlightened state. And then you have shed everything that's not. I'm talking about an awakening state is where you're generally most people are awakening, and to remain in enlightenment. My guru had said to me, to be in enlightenment is to walk through the mud and not have it stick. And what is meant by that, as we walk through life, there are so many things that happen to us or we experience. And out of that, we use it to define who we are and it sticks to us. And we become either the opposite of it or to do that. So enlightenment is to see all of that's around you and know who you are, okay, and not have it stick. It doesn't define who you are or who you are not. So that is the term of what I call enlightenment. Most of us are in a state of awakening to our authenticity. Like if you don't love me, it doesn't mean I'm not lovable. If you abandon me, it doesn't mean this, and we do that with our parents, and we have to wake up with our all of ourselves, and it can go back to the womb, if this happened, this does not mean this, how we identify. So that's what enlightenment is being able to walk through the mud and not have it stick. And awakening is waking up to the mud that is stuck on you and you're peeling it off and you're finding out who you are not and then becoming who you really are.
What are some, so awakening would be before enlightenment,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
How does a person
Yeah. And
identify they're going through the awakening state?
I think it's those little epiphanies that come up where they see patterns in their behavior, just as a simple one, and they realize why they were doing it. And they have this epiphany is like, just because you left me, it does this example, because it's about relationships too. Just because you left me, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person, and we take that in, and because now I believe I'm a bad person, I'll cover it up that I'm a really good person, and that's where I may go out and start over pleasing, overdoing, sacrificing and doing everything else, so trying to make up for this belief that I'm a bad person, or I am a bad person and I'm just going to be a bad person, but most of the time we try to cover it up with these little acts, like that. Or we're just going to, parents can say that with kids too. You're a loser. And you will either totally conform to it, fine, I'm a loser, and then don't expect much from yourself. You give up on things. Or they kept telling me I'm a loser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to overcompensate, and I am going to do more, be more, have more to prove, but it's not authentic. It's not coming from a natural place of who you are, because you're going to get burnt out. You're going to get exhausted. You're going to get pissed off. And that's when that awakening is starting to come out, when all of a sudden you realize, whoa, this is not working. So you go to a healer, you go to a therapist, and you say, I'm so stressed out. I'm doing all this, but I never feel good enough inside, because you still feel like you're a loser. And,
Okay.
and no matter how much you do and whatever you've done, you still feel like a loser. So an amazing therapist comes in, peels it open, says, this is where you got all this from. And you believe that you walked through that piece of mud and you took it on. But what's really amazing is if you really ask, like, what do you honestly, honestly believe? Well, I really, really believe I'm not a loser. So that takes courage to authentically, regardless of what's coming at you, is to own that I am not a loser. I am me. And
And
if
then
we
to get
really,
from awakening to enlightenment, how do we get there?
we heal all of that, we come into our own, we know who we are. And who we are is not defined. We are just being ourselves. That's going a little deep though, but it's beyond labels, because most of our labels are dualistic. I'm either a loser or I'm somebody, that's just as much pressure, like you are an achiever, or you are this, and we try to live up to that. You are this, you know, all these labels, and to go beyond all of those labels. And all we have left is the question is, when you say, well, who are you? It's me. And when we just go into me, there's no definition. We can put labels on if we want, but the teachings and what I know as an enlightened is that me is me. That's it. It's
And
me.
then you become and then you become a person that you can love because now it is authentically you.
Well, yeah, in a sense, yeah, you can become a person you love. You just are that. I think it's kind of like the words don't explain it, but if you look at a little baby, okay, a brand new baby, everybody goo-goos over a baby. And it's just like they're just so sweet. All they are is just being. They're not defined yet. And there's just this radiation of love. It's just acceptance. It's just presence. Does that make sense? And that just radiates love, presence and love. It's just being, right? There's no label yet until they start getting the labels, So when you are just in presence of being, authentically yourself. But I don't even like using the words authentically yourself because, well, this is me, I'm authentic, this is not. But just presence. There's no need to define anything. You can just walk through the mud. You know who you are, and you just, okay, whatever.
No, and I totally, for me, I totally get it. I like to break it down in a different way because I know what it feels like because it's something that I went through. And I think people who go through it, they know
Yeah,
they've gone through it, right?
yeah,
Um, those who haven't, and maybe they're still searching, I think, and maybe you'll agree, I think every person has the opportunity to reach that level.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But the word
Right?
is opportunity. It's
Is
whether you take
opportunity.
it or not. Yeah, I heard a really neat saying is what you have in your life is what you're willing to tolerate. That one is like, I really like that one. You're willing to tolerate. So when you up level, I mean, it's all part of healing and growing that when you up level yourself, what you tolerate becomes less and less and less. You're not tolerating. But we've adapted in so many ways to tolerate an unhappy life, to tolerate just, what I call it is surviving instead of thriving. We tolerate, not having our needs met. We tolerate it. We're so adaptable. We'll tolerate, right? And it's the ones that inside of them that are saying, I can't tolerate, feeling unhappy. I can't tolerate, that something's not working right for me. I can't. And those are the ones who go seek and go look out and say, I need to fix this. Something isn't quite right. So you're either a tolerator or you're one who is saying that's enough. Something's not quite right. Something doesn't feel right. And you seek out what you need. And it's the seeker to me is the one that is moving into the journey of awakening, the seeker.
Yeah, it's like someone is growing up and they've tolerated people around them being abusers, cheaters, and
Yeah.
thieves. And the
Yeah.
longer they're around it, when they see it in public, they're like, "Heh," because it doesn't bother them anymore. Then you, on the other side, you have the seeker, as you mentioned, who's like, "Wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. There has to be something
Yeah.
that's different, something that
Yeah.
is better in a sense, right?" And when they seek out, they're like, "Aha, I knew it." And then they go back to becoming, as you mentioned earlier, right, the real self. Because this person over here that was tolerating all this nonsense, that
Yeah.
wasn't really them, and they were doing it for whatever their reason. But now they're in a state where they are seeking it out, and we both discuss opportunity to do so. Are there some people that can miss the opportunity, but maybe get it back a second time?
Absolutely. And that's I'm going to say like awakening is a beginning of a revolution. Okay? When more people are awakening and no longer tolerating and they're living that, then the person who's stuck sees that. And so your awakening honestly is a gift to humanity to elevate all of humanity. So what happens is this person who's in there sees somebody over here is like, whoa, what are they doing different that they get this? I want that. Okay, that's the opportunity. So our awakening is our gift to humanity. And it's like to start a revolution of awakening up, you know. But I know Eckhart Tolle talks about it a lot too, is that when one is moving into the light, which is awakening, they're becoming enlightened, those around them, the darkness is shown more predominantly. Does that make sense? So that's what awareness does. So what happens, there's going to be this, and so some will move through that and others will recoil back deeper into the darkness. And that's just the nature. And I hate saying it, and I know I've heard it from other teachers. You have to stay on your path of awakening. That even goes in relationship. You have to stay on your path, and your partner will either move and it takes some time to, move through or recoil back. But this has to be the commitment in my mind is to stay. in your path of awakening. So there will be those that recoil and they will not come. And I think everybody here for a purpose. Everyone is here for a purpose. I've learned so much by mentors and teachers of what not to do rather than what to do. They're all there to teach. My biggest lessons, now that I've sort of changed my mode of learning, but before I learned the hard way. Like it had to slam me and take me out and it was like learning. So I mean, I was drawing, so they're all there everyone's there to help each other, whether we realize it or not. And everything is an opportunity. It's just which way do you want to move?
I
Towards the
get
light or
cons
into the dark.
yeah, I get concerned for those people who are on the path they're seeking and then they're in a relationship, but let's say their significant other, their partner, isn't supportive in a way. And as you mentioned, right, as they become illuminated, the other person seems to be darker and darker. Not necessarily
Yeah.
because of what they're doing, just because this other person's perspective and their view has changed. And then what
Yeah.
happens, they have to make a decision. And I can see some people, human nature, right? Well, you know what, Melanie, this unknown here is kind of scary. This unknown here is
Mm-hmm.
hard work. But to the left of
Mm-hmm.
me, where I see that it's not necessarily for me, I know what it is. I know to expect. I can, to use your words, tolerate it.
Yeah.
Right? How do we help those people find the balance between the two and let them know that, you know what, it's worth it. It's going to take some hard work, but don't give up.
I think you can say that, it's worth it, don't give up, and support and encourage. But I also know the practice of letting go and sometimes returning back to something that was another lesson that had to get learned if you're already on that journey. So sometimes, it's just we have to. I remember when I was in the ashram in India, the East Indians, when we went in front of the thing for Ramana Maharshi, we would just lay down and prostrate, and that's kind of like what we did. We traveled a long ways. It was a long time ago, and do that. And the Indians would come and just lay down and do that. And I said, "Oh my God, they're so spiritual," And my teacher said to me, he says, you have come so far from the West. You have gravitated out where you sought things and materialistic things to feed your spirit, and you realized that it didn't spiritually fulfill you. And you've come all the way back. Okay. And so you give such reverence to reclaiming your spirit, and for others, it's just an action. They haven't lost it yet. So sometimes our lessons, if we go back into a relationship and we have to sort of like scrape the bottom of the bowl and get that lesson deeper, okay, that just gives us a bigger commitment to never do it again. I've learned that, so I'm not here to judge. I could just support and say, hey, it is worth it, and if you're on this, listen to my series here and it'll resonate with you, or listen to someone who's there. But at the same time, it's sometimes what somebody has to do, because it's not quite, it's not quite, that it's still their journey, but that's part of their journey. Sometimes we have to learn through some hard things, or sometimes we have to learn this way or whatever, and we don't have that great appreciation and reverence for holding a stand on some things. Like we sometimes need that so we can hold a position, shall we say, I will not do this again. Like I can things of myself is this like self-care where I've sacrificed looking after myself to look after another. I gave up and I didn't care for myself towards my health and everything else. And then I know my family would see me like, my God, you don't look good, you're not healthy, you're not this, you're not that. But I had to get down to a certain point to kind of like, whoa, that's the bottom of my toleration, and I had to work my way up. But now there's a reverence and a vow, I will never do that again. But I don't think I'd be here to say never do that again if I hadn't allowed myself to see how far I could go, to know the ramifications of it. And that just goes for other simple little things in life too. Any, that you just say, I'm not going to, sometimes you have to go that far and you get it. It's like, I'll never tolerate that again. I won't do that again. I mean, I can give you another example. I'm celiac, right? So I'm gluten intolerant. So for the first 40 years of my life, I was not diagnosed, but I was constantly sick. I mean, constantly had problems. I got diagnosed that I was celiac, quit the gluten. Within 2 weeks, I started noticing difference. Okay, I'm 70 years old now. So for over 30 years, I have not had a bite of gluten. Why? Because I know how sick I was. I'm not risking it. I will not do it. So I think when we have those, it just makes us more standing in a position. I will not do it because I've been there. I will not do it. So you can't pull someone out if there's no real, um, like sometimes we have to find our own pain point where we choose. We can say, it's great, but sometimes you just got to say, okay, you
Yeah,
know,
some people have to hit rock bottom before they can climb back up.
what we're willing to tolerate. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And rock bottom for you may not be rock bottom for somebody else. But the nicest thing is we can move our rock bottom, and we do as our self-worth and self-esteem and sense of self appreciates. Okay. As we unfold everything else, it just goes up and up and up and up and up.
How do we maintain that and then continue to climb from there? As you mentioned, we're going further up, right? Without looking back and falling back down. Like, how do we maintain that and grow that?
Discipline, vigilance, repetition, um, using journal writing, meditation. Uh, my guru and he would always say to me, and I believe that when you sit in the fire, sit beside a fire, eventually you'll catch on fire. So you stay with and you be in a community of enlightened people who are also climbing. Does that make sense? But if you're the only one who's climbing and you hang out with, it's no more different than if you quit drinking alcohol and you go to the bar. Like, what do you really expect to happen here? You need to hang out with the people who you are emulating and want to become, which is evolved, aware, enlightened, thriving, taking care of yourself, everything else. So you start hanging out, and it eventually, it helps you, it moves you. Community is super important.
I told one of my friends recently, maybe about 2 months ago. I think it was 2 months ago, maybe a month ago, Melanie. I'm getting old and we forget certain things, right?
You're old.
So,
Hello. I just gave my age away. I'm the big 7-0.
and I told him that like we're talking about something, and I said, you know what really changed my perspective? And he said, what? I said that as soon as I started spending more of my time, because I was always around this group, but I said, as soon as I started allocating more of my time to this specific group of people and less of my time elsewhere, I learned so much more. And he's like, what group? And I said, it was successful people in healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Once I was around that, and I took my time away from people who were in unhealthy relationships, unhealthy situations, and for the most part, they put themselves in that. My eyes opened in ways that I couldn't even describe at that point in time. But being reflective, I told him like it's been a year and a half like that, and I said this is one of the reasons why I don't hang around with these types of people. Because he asked me that too. I was like, you begin to realize they're part of the reason why you're procrastinating on where you want to go, because you always said that he wants to get a better job and things like that. I was like, when you're around negative people and people who downplay progress, promotion, growth, eventually you're going to be like, okay, you know what? I can put this to the side. I told him, come to the other side, my friend. Come to the dark side. Right? I was like, and you begin to realize how important it is. And that's something that I learned, I don't say the hard way, but I learned very well. And I share it because I had to make a decision. And when I made that decision, it was within a couple of days. I was like, oh, Wow.
Yeah.
I was missing out.
Yeah. It's crazy, hey? It's just crazy. It's just so crazy. Like, and then to be able to see that and also recognize and validate yourself that as you move from this group over to this group, if you look at it, and I don't like using it, but let's just say they're operating at a 10 and you move over and you're just moving and operating at a 1, which is this over here is a negative 10, right? So now you moved into a 1. At that moment, you honestly invalidate yourself. You had a choice point. Your ego could have said, whoa, I look better looking at a 1 against all these negative 10s. I don't look too good and feel too I use the word enlightened or successful when I'm only a 1 and these guys are 10. But you chose, I want to get to a 10. But there are always those whose ego comes in and gives them that thing and that's the part you go through. Against this, I may not feel so great about myself. That can happen too.
I was just about to ask you before you said that. I was like, I wonder how often that happens where you have someone that is, they're doing all right. They have a successful life, but they hang around people that are underachievers, because I'm trying to be
Yep.
politically correct, and it makes them feel good because they're the ones who are the most successful. Does that happen?
Of course it does. I mean, even in relationships, like picking a partner who is less than, because then I get to feel important. I get to feel better than, I get to feel good. And that's where an awakening can come up and you realize and you see a therapist, you do something, it's like, God, I don't have to feel good over this. And like, ew, who did I get a hold of? You loser, you're not doing anything, you know? But this is where it's so important for us to unfold and really know the truth of who we are because all these roles and all of this stuff is totally interfering with what we are supposed to be and where we're supposed to be in our life. But it's our sense of self, and that's what I'm going to call the ego. There's nothing wrong with an ego, but it's come from a place of survival, not the way it was meant to be, but it's coming in survival. If I can feel better than it, then I can have my survival. If I can feel better than you, then I'm the top dog. If I can feel good about this, or if I can get this and I do this, then my survival, I'm going to make it. But that's just an ego gone amok. It's just totally gone amok. So it's very manipulative and it likes the underdog to feel better.
And then you can control that person because you're flexing your superiority in those ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's just a whole bunch, and even that element of control. It's just down the rabbit hole. How far do you want to go? And so, yeah, there's going to be those that don't, and they just feel that that's where they are, and it's just ego, and that's what they do. And then there are those that I don't know. And my sister and I, it's really funny because we often wonder is when we look at at what we've done, and she's done a lot of this journeying with me and stuff. And whatever made us like to want this, to want to awaken, to want to, and we see others that are just like no desire at all, and how much suffering in our minds. And they even complain that they're suffering, that they're not willing to make a change, and it's just like it still blows me away because it's just like, why wouldn't you? Like it just totally blows me away when that doesn't have to be. It does not have to be. We are, I really want it. Well, did you do anything? No, I didn't. You know, it's insanity at its finest. It's just this easy to want and desire and not have per se.
A part of me thinks that is fear, and another part thinks that it's so easy to be unhappy. Like if I wanted to find something to make me unhappy, I have that in abundance. And
Yeah.
I don't even have cable, right? But if I had cable and I turned on the TV, I can go to every channel and find something that makes me unhappy. I can go on social media and say that, okay, why does Melanie look like she has more money than me? Unhappy. Why does her hair look better than mine? Unhappy. Why does this person have a better car? Why does this person have better dress? I can find things that can make me unhappy. It's so easy. But when you go to someone and say that, hey, this isn't really you, let me help you with this. I can see why there's that hesitation because you're coming to them saying that you want me to do some work.
Mhm.
And to some
Yeah.
people, and what's one of the biggest fears that people have is change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. Is change because it's going into the unknown. But it's so funny because it's the unknown, but as you start moving, it's like, well, I kind of already knew this. I kind of already knew this. It's like the behind the shades have come off. And I was like, well, I kind of already knew that, but I wasn't like, I kind of already knew that. And it's just that little layer. And that sort of goes, that same epiphany that you get with your intuition. Like you just have this gut feeling to do this and you go against it, and you go against it enough time. And it's just like, you don't really have that thing. But when you go with it, you go, well, I kind of already knew that, you know? So, and that's when when you're starting to moving into alignment for awakening, is that this is like this, it's an awake, well, I kind of already knew that. And it's just you coming up. Well, I already knew that. I already knew that. I already knew that. I just wasn't living what I knew. I wasn't living what I already knew.
And I think maybe from the outside looking in, I had a former friend that went through that, and he holds on very aggressively to something that's not serving him, and he's always unhappy. And it
The
has
addiction.
totally, yeah, I was just about to say that it's totally
Yeah.
consumed him, and he's addicted to it. And just like you
Yeah.
mentioned, like he's aware of it. He's like, yeah, I know what my problems are, but he doesn't want to change it. And anytime someone mentions anything, he gets very verbally aggressive, in some cases, physically aggressive. And when you try to help someone be better, eventually, and this is, I think, the real unfortunate part in the whole equation, people start saying that, you know what, I'm wasting my time. Let this person be over here. Because once you've accepted um, who you are and it brings you joy, I don't think you would ever
Mhm.
go back to that other
No.
person, not for anyone else who's comfortable in their misery, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, you can analyze it until you actually work with the person, I mean, it could be so many things. It could be self-punishment, something that they've never forgiven themselves for. It can be attention. I get attention. People are coming to me and saying, "Oh, this," and I get control. There's a lot of control in that too. Everyone wants to, or people want to help and change, and you get to say no, like you're in control. There can be a lot of reasons, and so it's sort of like you have to pull that root out to get that out. But it can also just be an addiction too, because the fear of being happy is something that could be, I have to let go of who I am. So there's an identity. I've always been this. Now I have to, and the ego really doesn't like that. It will defend its self no matter what, right? And that's part of the hard path of awakening and moving into enlightenment, is you are not your ego, but we've been so conditioned to be identified by everything else except being ourselves. So to take those things away, it's just like, well, then who am I? I don't know. So I'm this. So yeah, could be a whole bunch of stuff, but definitely sometimes it's a simple addiction. But there's something being met, otherwise you wouldn't do it. There's
You
something.
actually, what you repeat is actually what he said. And he said exactly that when he's in that mood and he calls, because there's times where he'd call you 10 times in a day,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right? And he'll tell people, like, you're supposed to pick up the phone when I call. And if you don't pick up the phone, he'll send you a message. He's like, I'm calling you. He's like, why don't you pick up the phone, right? So it goes back to that control, that
Yeah.
attention. So you hit it right on the head because that's exactly what he said. And he even turned around and said that, well, you guys are my friends. You're supposed to listen to me complain.
Yeah. 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 And everybody is.
Yeah, everyone is. Well, I
Yeah,
should say everyone
working.
was. I should say
Yeah.
everyone was, right?
But
So I
then
think
someone will find more friends to do that, like someone else will. So And then I would flip the coin, and I would look at the person who's running to that call, because no two meet unless there's a role or something both to be discovered. There's nothing going on with you that isn't an opportunity, no matter where you are. So then you would look at, what is it in me that feels obliged and keeps returning those calls and keeps going into. And it could be, if I save somebody, then I feel better about myself, or if I do this, I do that. So there's always, opportunities are everywhere, because it always takes two to tango, and even if it's this or that, but it's always an opportunity. And he could just be, like I said, back, there's many kind of teachers. There's teachers who teach you what not to do, and there's teachers who teach you what to do. And sometimes we need to be taught to let go. And that's really hard sometimes if we have a friend or a loved one or someone that we really care about, and where they are is where we have to learn to let go. And that's where, this is sometimes the lessons that we have to do, is to let go and let be.
I've seen people
Without,
struggle with that.
yeah, and to do it with compassion and to do it with love. But lots of times we let go and let be. It's disgust. I'm out of here. But to let go and let be is, in essence, letting go and letting be. Whatever anyone is doing has got nothing to do with you anyhow. And that's where enlightenment comes in. Like you're walking through that mud, but it's got nothing to do with you. But if you feel like it's got to do at deep levels of, I'm a good person, I'm a caring person, I'm this. So this comes up to test you, you know? Can you let go and let be without having to have any kind of energy around it? It's just, it's okay. It has nothing to do with who you are. That's
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
100%. It's okay to let go of something that isn't serving you in a way that is beneficial. And I think people struggle with that, especially when it's people, because they make it seem like you're getting rid of like a shirt that is dirty, that's full of holes. Well, yeah, it doesn't
But
serve
the
you anymore.
but the opposite is also true. It's
Exactly.
also letting go of something that has been serving you and working for you, because we will identify with something that is either positive or negative. We're still identifying. I mean, the times, I think it was in the stock market when the dropped, people were killing themselves because their wealth was taken away, and that, or their job or a position or anything that happened. And that was what they identified themselves to be with. And this is where I think we're finding so much strife in our world. And there's so much conflict, and there's so much haves and have not, because we're identifying with so much outside of everything outside of us, and even identifying with emotions that we feel internally. I feel happiness, therefore I am happy. I feel sad, therefore I am this. We're just experiencing emotions. We're experiencing it. And if we recognized who we really are and we're just experiencing emotions, then can you imagine how much we would stop trying to just get these emotions and keep those ones at bay? We are not our emotions, we experience them. And then we wouldn't be so scared. Like, why are we scared to feel certain emotions? Because what happens is we unconsciously identify with them and we don't want them. So it's insanity at its finest.
Yeah, like you can
So
have someone see something that upsets them. Let's say someone, an old lady gets robbed or an older man gets um assaulted. We can see things that upset us, but then we quickly want to move on from it because, oh, I don't want people to know that I'm a person that's always mad. I'm like,
yeah,
no, you saw something happen, it upset you. Use that to maybe be more aware of your surroundings. or to help those in need. But I think you're right. Like we experience something and then we think you're always going to be that emotion, even though when what triggered that emotion has come and gone.
Yeah. And an emotion is something that we experience. There's an I, and then there's the emotion. I experience this emotion. I'm not the emotion that I'm experiencing. I experience it. I is solid. I is presence. I experience that. I am not this, but we've so identified, I'm experiencing happy that I'm a happy person. I experience joy and I can experience this, but I am able to walk through the mud without having it stick. I can experience all of this. And so when you recognize all this in a bigger scheme, your idea to try to stop controlling falls away. You don't have to control, but as long as we feel that we're always going to have to control something because my sense of self, okay, is determined on what I am experiencing or what is going on around me or what I have. And I always believe the universe has a warped sense of humor because it's going to find a way to take it away from you so you can learn this lesson, you know? So, yeah, so I mean, who knows how your friend is doing it and where one gets an experience of the sense of self out of doing an action of always running to their beck and call. And sometimes it can just be coming just from a simple, that's who you are, it's your natural self. I mean, you just naturally are that type of person. But the thing is, a lot of us don't know what is natural. We think it's natural, or what is a role that we've adopted and named ourselves as.
And to your point, I remember many years ago, a situation happened. I forget where I was working, but it was work related. And one of the bosses came to me and they asked me, "Trainer, are you upset at that about the situation?" I thought about it. I was like, "Not currently." Like, what do you mean you should still be upset? I was like, "No, when it happened, I may have been disappointed, but that was some time ago. Now I don't feel anything." And this person spent the next maybe 10, 15 minutes trying to convince me to be mad.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I asked him, I was like, why are you
Why?
trying so hard to get me mad?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm right. It's come and gone. Like, oh, you should be mad because this and this. I'm like, but it's happened an hour ago. I'm like,
yeah,
I experienced a number of emotions since then, right?
yeah,
Like it just reminded me of that situation where you tell me where this person was getting more and more upset. Now they're not even upset at the situation. They're
yeah,
upset because the people around them, including me, is no longer upset.
yeah,
And I guess
yeah,
to your point, when someone, I guess, they've defined themselves by the emotion and they want you to experience it with them,
yeah.
does that happen
And
as
it,
well?
and well, of course it will be because if you were mad and held on to the mad, then it made you this was the type of person you are. So let's just say I'm a self-righteous person and I'm mad at this. Okay. It should never have happened. I'm going to stay mad. I'm self-righteous. I believe in this and I do this and so on and so forth. And then someone over here is like, you're not mad. Well, you're not a self-righteous person. You should be mad because it makes that's who you are. And so we're trying to, that could come from that angle, in a sense. Like if you feel the same feelings about this, then it means this is the kind of person you are because that's the kind of person I am by feeling this, you know? And I think, of course, when authentically we may just feel that, but it's not forcing ourselves or making itself, and a lot of it's unconscious, we don't even know, it's so automatic that we just do, you know and or we're holding on to that feeling because that defines us or a stand or whatever we're taking.
Like when someone says they're a nice person, right? And you said, okay, what makes you a nice person? And they can't answer the question. I was like, well, what makes if you can't tell me what makes you a nice person, how did you come to the conclusion that you're a nice person? You could be someone that is obedient, you could be someone that is time sensitive, like you can punctual, you can be these things, right? But when
Sure.
you try to say that I am this emotion, and then when someone asks you, okay, tell me how you're that emotion, you can't answer the question.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of
And
tough, right?
in all honesty, is it is the person who is perceiving you that defines you. You know, depending on wherever they are or whatever their belief system is, they will define you. In truth, we either listen to how they define us and then we buck against it, or we try to accommodate it by proving that we are. But we go back to the place of, I am just me. I don't have a defining sense of myself. I'm just me. I'm me present. And when we do that, something very magical happens, because when we allow ourselves just to be present in the moment, and something happens or something does, and we respond instead of coming from a defined sense of self, and we just simply respond, this is where we go, I didn't even know I had that in me. Like we find gifts inside of ourselves, we find qualities inside of ourselves that we did not have, but we also don't hang on to it, because when we hang on to this quality, then it won't serve us to have a different kind of quality that is needed in a different kind of situation. Example will be, okay, my quality that comes out is in kindness, and it is in love, and it is in compassion, right? Okay, that's fine. So I hold on to this. This is who I am, kind and compassionate and loving. And some jerk over here is doing something to one of my grandkids or something. You're going to watch Collie come out. I am not kind and compassion. You're going to watch a tiger come out, and I've got a fierce in me if I have to protect, right? But if I'm so busy hanging on to this identity, okay, I can't just respond in an authentic, true way, okay, that is necessary or needed in that moment. So I'm multiple, okay? I am of many facets, and whatever comes out, I'm all of it, is when I let go of it, a definition of who I am.
So, Melanie, as we close, what advice do you want to give to our audience out there to continue on the journey of awakening and to reach enlightenment?
Keep waking up. Keep waking up. Keep discipline. Keep moving towards, like I said, and you said too, is gravitating toward groups that you aspire to. Um, See what someone has that you want, and how did you get that? How do you do that? You know, do your inner work. Listen to what we're just saying. If it tweaks, um, I really believe is when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And life can, and so many different things can teach us. It's just that willingness inside that I want more. And I think this is why every healer, every teacher makes themselves visible, is to say, we're all being a light, come to the light. We're all showing you different, whether someone's super successful with money, they're going to teach you. If this is what you really want, you go to them and say, teach me how. Show me, who do I have to, what do I have to do? Who do I have to see? Who can I, learn from, to have, if this is really what your heart is desire, or whatever the case may be.